Hello and welcome to the 73rd episode of NR Defense. And it's a very happy week for most of India. Abhishek, Chandrayaan-3 landing on the moon yesterday.
Lovely moment, lots of excitement in our newsroom as well.
Yeah.
That moment was being followed by everybody. Quite thrilling.
At times like this, it becomes tough for us. You're covering it live and
not to be
react.
That old traditional way of thinking that journalists should not be part of the story, but it doesn't happen sometimes. We get swayed as well with emotions. And nothing wrong with this one, not taking any sides. Yeah. Something like this, it's not just a great moment for India. I mean, it's a huge moment for India, but these achievements are global achievements.
Of course.
It doesn't stop at one country. So
it's just about bragging rights. I mean, some people had said, it's just bragging rights that India is the first to land near the south pole of the moon. It's not about bragging rights. It's about a scientific achievement because tomorrow, if somebody else wants to send a mission there, they'll get some tips from this mission. Exactly. What did you guys do? That
we got our tips from
their missions. Exactly.
And our previous missions that were not successful. Chandrayaan-2. So that's how it goes.
Yeah, and I think. Most of our listeners and viewers would know, but a lot of these space missions have a huge impact on a topic that we discuss, defense, because most of the technologies that are used by militaries around the world are usually proven first in space.
Yeah, every space technology will have
a military
military aspect at some point of time.
At some point of time,
In fact, then Squadron Leader Rakesh Sharma was an Air Force officer.
And in fact, the humans, the Indians who are supposed to go to space, I think later this decade, sometime in the next few years, I think, are actually Air Force officers. And 4 of them are being trained.
Yes.
They went to Russia, which is, by the way, a topic of a discussion. Russia for training, have come back, and it's a very secretive operation. I think Abhishek will probably have some more information, but he will not reveal, I think.
No, we can talk about it sometime later, maybe.
So they are back in India. Training chal raha unka bhi, and 3 of them, the fourth is a backup. 3 of them will go to space hopefully one day. So what do we talk about? So I thought Chandrayaan would be the only thing making news yesterday, all right? Except, of course, Pragyananda, who's in, I forgot where he is, but he's playing the chess Grandmaster finals.
The finals,
against Magnus Carlsen. And today is the final as we speak. We're recording on a Thursday. So today is the final as we speak. Third game. And it's a tiebreaker. So we'll see. The match is going on. So we'll see what happens once we leave the recording room. But something happened at night that actually eclipsed Chandrayaan for a moment.
Not eclipsed Chandrayaan.
For a moment. For people like you and I, come on.
Yeah, we have interest, but I wouldn't say it eclipsed Chandrayaan.
For me, briefly it did. Because and the reason is, I'll get into the reason. But it did. The topic is Yevgeny Prigozhin. We've talked about him previously, a few episodes ago. We'll have a link to the episode in our show notes. He's the he's the head of this group known as Wagner, and is known to lead a paramilitary force that is backed by the Russian state.
It's a private military.
And it's been in focus since the Ukraine invasion, the first one, the Crimea invasion. And uske baad there's been talk that the Wagner group has been there in Africa. There have been allegations of torture, human rights abuses against it, and that how the Russian government under Vladimir Putin has used the Wagner group to kind of hide its hand in many things it would not want to be formally linked to. Mining, exploitation, resources exploitation, human exploitation, stuff like that. And this guy was apparently very close to Vladimir Putin, which is why he was known as Putin's chef.
Yeah, Putin's chef.
Not because he cooked for him, but because he used to get dinner contracts for the Russian military. A couple of months ago, June
23rd, 24th.
Yeah. June 23rd, 24th, he launched a mutiny, so to speak.
The mutiny was launched on 23rd. It was beaten back the next day within 24 hours.
That's what the world was told.
Yeah, that's what Russia has said.
With the intervention of Belarus, and apparently Wagner was supposed to rehabilitate in Belarus, and he was
very intriguing stuff.
That
can be discussed right now as we take forward this discussion.
So the intriguing story didn't end there. So yesterday, apparently there was a plane crash, a private jet that crashed. It's said to be carrying Prigozhin on it. And
the manifest had his name.
Manifest had its name, had its name.
So technically a manifest is a list that the establishes who are the passengers.
Passengers, cargo, both on the plane.
So that had his name. So technically, he was on board.
Yeah. So international laws require every flight to have a manifest declaring what you're carrying. That has to be given to international air traffic agencies, something like that. So his name was there, and that's obviously led to speculation that he's dead. We don't know because there's no way of knowing, by the way. I mean,
no confirmation.
I don't imagine he has a family who'd come forward and confirm his death or a spokesperson. I mean, Wagner Group probably has a spokesperson, but I doubt they'll be coming because after the failed mutiny, if you want to call it that, they had sort of disbanded, if you remember.
I mean, there were the stories that there's been a split. Some people are in Belarus. Some would want. That was the offer given to them.
Yeah.
That you can either go and settle down in Belarus or you can be part of the Russian Defense Forces. So, but we didn't hear much from the Russian official agencies. What exactly has happened? How many have gone to Belarus?
Yes.
How many have come
Stayed
here?
back, yeah.
So all of that hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
So it's all in the realm of mystery, and the news of his death once again is adding to that mystique. I have a sense, I have a feeling that Russia wants this mystery to continue.
Of course. Yeah.
It just adds to the narrative of two things. One is that the one that suits Russia is that you see Putin is a hard taskmaster and he's taken punitive action. And it makes him sort of look good that a mutiny such as this, a rebellion such as this will not be tolerated. But at the same time, it leaves a vacuum. But is he really dead? Is he not dead? I was at a broadcast, part of a broadcast a little while earlier for one of our digital platforms, and we had a Russian journalist. And she said that there's no confirmation of the death. And another very significant aspect that she pointed out is that there's a third time Prigozhin has died in a plane crash.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Wow.
So I did not know that either. So I think that just tells us the story, that the story begins from here.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the story.
Of course.
So if it's the third time that he's died in a plane crash, then of course the story gets interesting.
Wow. Interesting. That's an interesting
And
note.
that's what makes it more intriguing, that till now everybody's been discussing what if he's dead? Or if you flip the question,
What if he's alive?
what if he's alive?
And what he's doing right
I
now.
think there'll be, it will add to the mystique, as I said.
Yeah. If he's alive, then what is he doing right now? What plans does he have? And what if this whole thing has actually not...
Is it a stage thing? Is it a psyop? So many questions come to mind.
I get your first point of how you were saying that this kind of helps Russia in a way, because I think the last episode when we discussed Wagner and Prigozhin, we ended with this query that, not query per se, but you had made a good point that there were two lines of thoughts back then. That the mutiny was either stage managed by the government itself to kind of break the bones of Wagner, or that it actually did happen. So in the second scenario, the government looked a bit weak. How can you let a mutiny like this happen? And in the first one,
And then the offer given to them.
The offer given to them, exactly.
And there were, I think, 14 or 15 pilots that had died.
Yeah.
Russian pilots that had died in the assault that was launched by the
Wagner Group. Yeah.
So if they've managed to kill your serving officers and personnel, you're supposed to take punitive action, isn't it? And there and then. But this kind of narrative that went was that there's some kind of a compromise with people who've actually attacked your own military.
Exactly.
Within your country. It wasn't even an external attack.
And who threatened to go to Moscow and take over the defense headquarters. And the problem with the first theory was also that Putin looks weak, because then it was that your war in Ukraine is going so bad that you have to rely on these people, and then you have to pretend that for them to have a mutiny against you in order to be able to crush them. So
and they were fighting in some of the battles of the Ukraine war.
Yes.
The Wagner group.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were there in some of the tough battles actually, and they did make an impact.
That was apparently the point of the mutiny, that we are the ones who are dying.
We are the ones who are making the
worst fighting.
impact,
and you are just ignoring us. That was the point.
And that wherever we faced reversals,
it was because of your failure, as in the government's failure.
Governments and the military leadership. And if I remember correctly, when it happened, there was this messaging that we're not against Putin per se.
Oh yes, we are against,
the Ministry
of
of
Defense
and the defense forces of Russia.
Yeah.
And that sort of added to that mystery again. After all, it's Putin's war. He was the one who was the face of this special operation that has been launched, and suddenly you have somebody saying that, no, Putin has done okay. He's fine. We have a problem with them. So there still is a lot of intrigue and confusion, if one can say, to what exactly the Wagner group wanted, what were their demands, what was their objective.
Yeah.
And I still suspect that this story is not dead.
Story is not dead. The man himself might not be dead, so story.
This is what Russian journalist said, that the third time he's died in a plane crash.
It reminds me of the.
And she gave another example. She said, you have a history of mysterious plane crashes in India, so you would know how plane crashes are. So, yeah.
Wow, interesting. Before we go into the whole politics of it all, how Putin looks, what happens to the war in Ukraine, whether it's dead or alive, let's just come out for a bit and go to what I was saying at the beginning of this episode, and why for me this story for a brief time eclipsed even the Chandrayaan-3 landing, is because Russia, everybody in the world knows, has a history of having mysterious deaths of people
they have.
against the regime. Before this episode, I did research, and this is just the last, I think, few years. There was a Russian lawyer who was investigating tax fraud of Russian government officials. He died in a Moscow prison after apparent torture, allegations of torture. We don't know that for a fact. There was a former FSB agent who died from poisoning, radiation of plutonium, some sort of a chemical. A former deputy prime minister, opposition politician, was shot dead near the Kremlin.
That was not many years back.
This was 2015. Boris Nemtsov. Human rights lawyer was kidnapped and was
journalist as well. If I remember, some journalist also was killed.
Yeah. I think this is the one. I think Natalia Estemirova. I think she was highlighting abuses by pro-Russian Chechen authorities, and she was found to have been shot dead. There was an famous attempt in the UK, and on which there's also a Netflix documentary, The Salisbury Poisonings, where a former FSB agent, if I'm not wrong, and his daughter, they were sitting at a park somewhere, and they were infected with nerve poison, something like that. And the UK is officially on record said that the FSB, the Russian spy agency, was behind this. And even in India, by the way, Jan this year, there was the deaths of 3 Russians, tourists apparently, in Odisha. And I remember because we'd done stories, and there was a mystery because these 3 apparently had died after falling off their hotel balcony, which, by the way, has happened to several of these people on the list who've mysteriously died. People
so what
falling
could be
off.
The India connection?
I know it happened in India. I mean, I'm not saying India connection that way. It just happened in India. So it was.
Who were these people?
They were supposed to be tourists, but there were reports in some media that there were also politicians back home, local level politicians, and not high level politicians. They're politicians nonetheless.
No, the irony of this is, of course, it's known fact that there have been so many mysterious deaths in Russia. In the list that you had, all of these were seen as enemies of the state.
Yes.
This
exactly.
This
guy was seen as a friend of the state, until you say off late.
Until June 23 June 2023. So that's stark irony.
Yeah, stark irony. Yeah.
Somebody who was supposedly close to the establishment, supposedly close to Putin himself, has been targeted. Now again, there could be conspiracy theories galore. Has he really died? Is this a plant? Is this a PSY operation? Is he functioning from somewhere else? Will he have another identity? Will he work in disguise?
Yeah.
What happens to the Wagner group? These are all questions that people are talking about, isn't it? That will the Wagner group continue? Because it's not a classic military body.
Yes.
That has hierarchies or protocols.
Or reporting to somebody. Ultimately.
Or protocols, isn't
protocols,
it? This was something like, it's been referred to as a business. He's like a CEO of these mercenaries. Of course, wearing battle fatigues. And another aspect that the Wagner feels that they are good at is that there are no hierarchies. There's no bureaucracy.
Yes. They're effective.
Per se, yeah. So because of that, that gives them more teeth. They're more effective. That's the way a mercenary group will think. A professional army will want
some bureaucracy.
SOPs, if they want to call it
a professional army.
Yeah. If they want, if somebody else wants to bureaucratic, but so be it. I mean, you need standard operating procedures. You need a structure of command. Otherwise, you cannot function. So, I mean, all this will be discussed and talked.
Yeah.
And the big question, does Wagner continue? Does it not continue?
Does it not continue? Yeah. Remains. So, what I was getting at with that list, and that's where I want you to come in, is if I were to examine this issue very dispassionately, without any morals, let's not bring in morals for a bit. If all of this is true, all the speculation is true, the poisonings, the shooting, it's sort of a very easy way of killing somebody, of these mysterious falls from high rises and buildings, then I would say that the FSB, the Russian spy agency, or whatever agency is involved in all these deaths, is perhaps one of the world's best agencies. And it's also all of this is also quite filmy, because this is the stuff you see in Mission Impossible and James Bond. So as a person who's covered defense and also covered, all these agencies, at least of the Indian side, because they obviously are linked in the larger national security setup, क्या ऐसा सही में होता है?
यार होने को तो हो सकता है, but again, sometimes your sensibilities don't allow. See, in India, this is not possible. Wagner is not possible in India.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, at least I hope so. I mean, I'm not proven wrong. Wagner doesn't seem to be a reality. It still baffles me. How can a mercenary
group exist?
Gang, quite literally, roam around with sophisticated weapons? Ex-convicts in many of these cases.
He used to go to jails and recruit them.
And it's a private company. Also being used in other countries. So I don't know how come those other countries are allowing them on their land. It's a very, very, very intriguing subject to begin with. So in the Indian context, of course, I don't think it's possible. But the world of spying, espionage, intelligence, it is weird. As you said, let's take morals out.
Yes.
They function in a similar manner. You cannot be preaching morals and then sort of doing these kind of jobs. It's like an army being the harbinger of peace. It's not that they are killers. They don't want to be showcased as killers.
The training is not that. The training is to kill.
Yeah, but if the need be, they will have to. They will not go and give a speech on peace.
Of course.
Say in the Indian context, at the LSE or LOC or wherever. So, these are dirty games. And sometimes we get to know of it as journalists. Sometimes we don't. The larger civilian population very seldom gets to know. It's only if we get to know something and we are in a position to sort of put it out to the public. Also, as journalists, it's not easy because to get versions.
Yeah, to confirm this stuff like this, how do you confirm stuff like this?
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And not so much now, but there was a time, the kind of reporting ethics that I grew up with was that any story, forget about sensitive stories such as this, unless you have somebody on record, of course, then it's fine. Unless you have confirmed from 3 different sources, don't run the story.
Yeah.
The 3 different sources is a tall ask in today's date when news just breaks in a few words, quite literally, on social media. That's the challenge as a journalist, isn't it? We are not a mercenary gang of journalists. We are not Wagner. We are proper journalists. So I mean, we do have information mercenaries as well these days. So dealing with them is quite similar to a professional army dealing with a mercenary gang like the Wagner.
No, I mean, the reason I said that the Russian agency or agencies involved would be one of the world's best is because, again, morals aside, ethics aside, if you look at this just from a pure, sort of a studying point of view, then some of these deaths have occurred in places that are not in Russia. Like the Odisha ones, for example. I'm not saying, by the way, there's something more than what happened. But these deaths have happened outside Russia. So for an agency to be able to do something like this outside their own country, sometimes...
What did our police investigation say about those?
I don't think there's an update. They just said we'll investigating, and it just sort of died down like it normally does with such Russian deaths. That is why I brought up the Odisha deaths. Three tourists within a span of 15 days. Same hotel room, if I'm not wrong. I'll have to go back and check the reports. But this was Jan this year. Police was investigating. The Russian embassy said we are following up, and then it sort of died down. So anyway, my point being, so an agency operating in foreign countries for something like this, having that sort of logistical local support, this sounds like a big ask. And this is a country, now let's move to Wagner. This is a country at war. One of the things that struck me last night when I read about Prigozhin's supposed death was, is Russia, what is going on in Russia? Like, is the war happening? Are they focused on that? Or like, are they dealing with their own internal trouble? I mean, it should be a mess right now, I think, in Kremlin.
I don't think it's a mess. Because, see, the war is happening very far off from where a lot of people live in Russia. I mean, it's very far from Moscow, the capital, maybe 1,000, 1,200 kilometers away. Having said that, there is a 50-50% view on the war as far as Russians are concerned. There are several Russians who have not agreed with their government, with President Putin's military action, which has been called a special operation, punitive in nature. Well, there will be some. Of course, there are some that who sort of are backing him. But there's no clear-cut nationalistic jingoism around the war. In fact, when the invasion happened, there were a lot of protests, which later they were sort of
quelled.
Not even quelled. They were not shown.
Okay. Yeah.
So if it's happening, I think a few international publications and broadcasts would have done it. But after that, we didn't see much of that. So it's not as if the Russians are all gung-ho about the war. I don't think so. And the way the war is anyway progressing seems never-ending, isn't it now? So you have the Ukrainians getting F-16s now from their Western partners, so-called Western partners, who've been saying that we are out there to help you, we are friends. They'll need pilots to be trained on F-16s
Denmark
as
and
well.
One other country are supplying it to them.
And see, till now this war has not seen air power. And without that, a lot of destruction has happened. So if you have conventional air forces from both sides participating, I don't know then what will be the levels of destruction that we are going to see. And there has been no answer to this. Why the Russians did not use
air power. This is, I think, a question we've talked about since day one, this podcast. So,
so and that still remains unanswered. Lots of theories, of course. One, that they did not want collateral damage beyond a point, which... but why I don't quite completely agree with that kind of an argument. The way technology has emerged and the way professional air forces function, the scope for collateral damage has been minimized quite a lot. Quite a lot. So if you can't get your targets right, then there's a problem with your pilots.
The pilots,
Simple. So that I don't know if that's just an excuse to sort of not use your air force, because when you use your air force, you also have the risk of your fighter aircraft being exposed, being brought down. So it's, I think, a double-edged sword there for
the theory obviously being that the Russian Air Force is in a very bad shape in terms of maintenance, that they don't want to risk. And what you said, the risk, getting it shot down.
So now what happens with the Ukrainians getting F-16s, pilots getting trained on them? It will take a while, but it just gives you a sense that to call this a long haul now would be an understatement. Ukraine is looking at this as a war that will never end.
Yeah. So, just to talk theory, theoretically speaking, if a never-ending war, what is it like? I mean, then what's the objective of both the militaries? What happens at the ground level? What happens at the staff level? When I say staff level, I mean the generals back home who are doing the strategizing, the planning. What is it? Like, for example, if you are, I hope you do not be, but if you are the Russian military chief, you wake up and what's your agenda? Like, kya karna hai mujhe aaj? Because see, because again, I'll tell you a context that I know of. I know Kargil because I was growing up when it happened. I knew the objective was very clear. There were a few intruders sitting on what we knew was our side of the LOC, and they had to be pushed out. For them, it was very clear that we are going to be pushed out, so we need to just stay where we are staying. Bas
hold on to a position.
Hold on to it. Even if it happens in the next 1 year, but this is what the objective. Ab kya hai? Like, this is like I said, it's like a quagmire of sorts. So what's the objective in the general's mind? Karna kya hai bhai abhi?
नहीं, करना ये है तो first and foremost the places that they have taken control of, to hold on to those positions, because a lot of the Donetsk region, which was supposedly the focus of the war, is under Russian control.
Okay.
So some objective has been achieved. Now the next objective is to hold on to those positions. Because the Ukrainians are coming back again and again, there is a confrontation. If the Ukrainians were completely pushed back, there would be no confrontation. And this would be a completely so-called liberated zone from a Russian point of view.
Like Crimea is.
From a Russian point of view.
Yeah.
Because assaults are coming from the Ukrainian side, the fighting is continuing. And now with things like F-16s and all this being part of your war machinery, you can imagine what will happen next.
Right.
So, see, I at the cost of repeating myself, India and Pakistan are a classic example of an unofficial, never-ending war. Pre this ceasefire reiteration that has happened
a couple of years ago.
People outside of Kashmir, not even mainland Kashmir, forget about people outside of the forward areas of LOC, never realize that that's a war zone. It's people like us who have visited there, sleeping at night, eating dinner, and you hear shelling. That's not a war. You're not in wartime. ATGMs, anti-tank guided missiles. I mean, the nomenclature tells you what it's meant for. It's meant to take down tanks. I saw a lot of those in Ukraine when I was there, and how efficiently they were used by the Ukrainians to target Russian armor. Here in the Indian and Pakistani context, both sides use ATGMs, or at least would use ATGMs, not to hit tanks. There are no tanks there.
I was going to think.
There are no tanks there. They would use it to hit each other's posts.
Wow.
That's how powerful they are. If it can destroy a tank,
obviously,
it can destroy
bunker.
a post. Any kind of dwelling. So you have you've had your forces using these anti-tank guided missiles, anti-tank weaponry, targeting each other. And you were never at war.
Get your point.
So this is what has happened with those areas of Ukraine and Russia, that they will remain at war. And that's how it will be.
Let's circle back to Wagner and what happens with his death or non-death, but after a quick break.
Given this very uniquely difficult position that India finds itself in, of being the only country in BRICS that would want to control China's rise, how do you see the negotiation over letting in more countries play out?
Well, now there are a few things over here. If we talk about the SCO, that is China and Russia led primarily, because India joined in much later. If you look at countries that are showing interest in joining SCO, they are countries that are actually those who do not have great ties with the West, but want to align themselves with a forum that they can deliver in and that can deliver for them, because it's going to be a very close group. BRICS is not that, Anna. One, because India has been a part of the BRICS when it was BRIC. And even if Brazil was not there, there was the RIC, which is again Russia, India, China. The idea was that you need a regional forum to discuss and have conversations despite and in spite of the problems the two countries face. And that they've been able to do all through, whether it's BRIC or now BRICS. If you look at the countries that are showing interest in joining the BRICS, they are the global south. You're not looking at a European country wanting to join BRICS. Why? You're not looking at a Western developed nation like the United States of America wanting to be a part of BRICS. Why? Because they don't consider it a grouping that they want to be a part of. They already have their G7, and then they have the G20.
Welcome back. We are discussing the Russia-Ukraine war, something that Abhishek and I had thought we'd discuss this week, but not in the context that we are actually. We were going to talk about the Russia-Ukraine war because Ukraine is supposed to be getting new F-16, not new F-16s, but F-16s on loan from a couple of neighboring countries, Denmark and one more, I forgot which one. They are their old F-16s that they plan to phase out. They already have phased out. The US has agreed. The US being not the government, but the US being the country, being the manufacturer, also apparently has clauses that the recipient countries cannot use them in ways that is not part of the deal that is signed.
Yeah, like in the context of Pakistan, they'll use it only for anti-terror operations.
In Afghanistan and not against India.
Anti-terror operations.
Terror operations, yeah.
That was an interesting story as well,
Yeah. And I think let's not go there because I think वो अलग tangent चढ़ जाएगा पूरा शायद से.
ठीक है, मतलब if you have something in mind.
I remember so Pakistan's argument. So when we said कि we shot down an F-16, their thing was कि first of all हमने तो use करा ही नहीं F-16. कैसे तुमने shoot down कर दिया? Because we have an agreement with the US that it forbids us, as though that's going to stop them.
And we showed spare parts.
We showed spare parts of the shot down. But then there was a claim, and I don't know what happened of that claim. कि US officials had come down, inspected Pakistani air bases and accounted for each F-16. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
what happened to that? Was that for real?
Well, only the two countries can confirm. Because I remember when there was an official comment on this, there was a dilly-dallying kind of an answer
from the US, you
side.
mean?
Yeah, there was still no there was a lot of ambiguity.
The words used were such that it would suit both India and Pakistan.
Still basically. Some ambiguity in that, but this is fog of war.
Yeah.
If everything is going to be spelled out,
of course,
then there would be no wars.
Yeah.
Then there would be no air operations in Balakot.
Yeah, of course.
So all this is part of it's part of that language.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, see, for the US, its interests lie in both areas. It also has to placate Pakistan while keep India a friend. So it'll obviously use words that will help both of them. Anyway, so coming back to the Russia-Ukraine war. So the context was supposed to be that Ukraine's going to get these jets sometime soon because I think their pilots need some more training
of course
on F-16. And how that might impact the war.
They don't have the kind of an air force that actually can take on the Russian Air Force.
Yeah, actually...
but all that was being said even about the army. So
yeah, that is true. That is true. And there's an interesting aspect of it which I meant to discuss with you, but I think we'll do that in a later episode. But I'll just broach the topic. Is when I was reading up about this, I came across this interesting analysis that the F-16 is such a fighter jet that the Ukrainian Air Force will have to change its ethos to kind of be able to adapt to having F-16s and using them. I didn't quite get what the person who was writing that piece meant by that, but I think we'll talk about this in a later episode.
To put it in extremely layman's language, is that they are not accustomed, they are not trained to operate such machines.
Yeah, maybe. So we'll come to that because
and also they've never used their Air Force as sort of an offensive war machine.
Yeah.
They don't even have a full-scale
Air Force
kind of an Air Force that some of the other countries have. So when they come to ethos, I think that's what they mean, that their mindset,
right,
their training, their ways of operating. So yeah, it's a combination of everything, I guess.
I guess it's a difference between operating a stock manual or automatic car versus an F1 car. Different engines altogether, different abilities, etc., etc. But that was supposed to be the context. But the context now is the supposed death of Prigozhin. Long-time Putin friend turned foe, turned mutiner. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just everything is shrouded in mystery. First things first. When the news flashed, plane गिर गया है, Prigozhin supposedly on the manifest. Not supposed, he's on the man. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Everyone's confirmed that. But no one knows what's happened. Of the 10 people who were on board, I mean, they've died for sure, but...
Mortal remains of 8 have been found.
Your first thoughts and your thoughts on what it would do to the Ukraine war and what it does to Putin's image.
No, I don't think it does
like
anything to the Ukraine war. Ukraine war, as I said a little while
It's stuck
earlier,
there.
it's not going to end. It's more about Russia than about the war or the operations in Ukraine, how Russia deals with it. And as we've been saying that still no clarity. 8 mortal remains have been found. It shouldn't take very long for Russia if they want to announce that
he's dead.
They can.
It should have happened by now.
What stops them?
It's I think more than 15, 16 hours now. Should have happened by now.
Yes. What is stopping them from making this announcement?
So you made a point earlier in the episode that the intrigue helps Russia.
Yes.
Just tell me a bit more. Kaise?
No, as I was mentioning that if he's alive, it gives them the handle and him the handle to function with another identity, in disguise or whatever, and that's part of the intrigue, part of the psyops that could play very well here, and give this message that see, we've taken on anybody who's messed with us. But what it doesn't do is it still doesn't tell you what about the other guys. What have you done with them? Are they in jail? What punitive action have you taken? I was reading a good analysis actually, which again was off the radar of mainstream news till last night, midnight probably. And which was that there was a precursor to this attack. That precursor was that there was
You mean the mutiny?
No, sorry, the plane crash.
Oh,
I mean the plane crash. Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
We don't know for a fact if it was an attack yet.
So again, there are conspiracy theories that this was an attack.
Yeah.
So the precursor to the clash was that there has been a sustained effort by the Russian side to decimate the Wagner group.
You mean militarily or psychologically?
Yes,
okay.
Militarily.
Yeah.
So again, but not in mainstream.
Not in mainstream
news,
at all, yeah.
But part of analysis that has suddenly sprung up.
But कहाँ पर हो रहा है ये?
Within Russia.
Okay.
Within
okay,
Russia.
Okay.
Within
Because some
Russia.
of them are supposed to be in Belarus, right?
It's within Russia that the Russian military is actually now taking them on.
Acha.
And I read it on one of the decent sources of the Russia-Ukraine war. One of the portals that has been... It's a US-based think tank. So this was quite interesting that a US-based think tank is saying that there are reports that the Russian military was actually trying to push back the Wagner group, and then this happens. So I mean, if you join the dots at all, then it adds to the mystery, isn't it?
It doesn't add to the mystery. It kind of then makes it a bit even clearer. I mean, not ki yaar.
No, but this is just one analysis.
Of course. We don't go by
I am
it.
saying it adds to the mystery because
this is
no
another point of view that
no clarity.
we've not thought
The Russian,
about.
If this was happening, why hasn't the Russian government said so?
Yeah, that he was. I mean, they don't have to say we did it, but they can just say.
No. Why can't they say that we are taking on the Wagner group?
Oh, that way you mean?
Militarily,
Actually, yes.
It's a rebel group which has gone rogue. If that military action is happening, if that military punitive action is happening against them, why is it not in public domain? So these kind of things are sort of
It's a very interesting thought. I can't think of why
are
that
there
would
no
be.
headlines about
Yeah.
it? It leaves us with a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
this I suspect is going to continue.
The last time we spoke about Prigozhin and the Wagner group, you kind of gave us this impression that you believe that there was some back and forth within Putin and Prigozhin about it, because you had said that Belarus geographically is the position from where Russia would want to attack Ukraine in the future if it chose to go on the offensive.
As far as Russia is concerned.
Yeah. Because Belarus was the one who apparently negotiated between the Wagner group and the Russian government. That itself for me was very weird. A private company, a sovereign power, another sovereign power is coming in and negotiating between those two. But anyway, the weird details aside. So you kind of, I'm not sure that's what you believe in, but you just have this suspicion that kahin na kahin to Putin and Prigozhin, they have some sort of back channel going on.
No, I still have suspicion on what exactly is happening.
Do you think this still is also part of that?
Yeah, the fact that that's why I mentioned up front that the fact that the Russian journalist on our broadcast mentioned that this is the third time he died in a plane crash. What do we say after that? And I didn't know this.
Yeah.
That's the kind of narrative setting. This is something that Russian media should have screamed and said straight away. Why does it take a journalist to just mention this in our...
True.
I think this should have
been there.
The headline.
I mean, I think I'm going to go out and get a story done like this. I mean,
definitely. Yeah. So you can find out if it happened before. And she gave dates as well. I don't remember the dates.
We'll find out.
So she gave 3 dates. So I'm sure it's there in public domain. Yeah. But yeah, that's the kind of information you have these days. You're bombarded with so much that sometimes you miss out on these small details which are explosive. But again, I think Russian media should have had a story around this.
While you were talking, I just came up with a theory of my own, complete speculation obviously, that this perhaps is Putin's way of, carrying out a purge within his government without coming out and accepting that, it is his fault in the first place for having them in those places. Basically use Prigozhin as the guy to attack the Minister of Defense and the military chief and make them the scapegoats for this ongoing, never-ending invasion of Ukraine, for which Russian, I'm guessing, citizens are paying dearly with lives of their loved ones, plus, I'm guessing, inflation and other economic hardships. So basically use Prigozhin to target these two guys, which he can't do openly. I mean, again, pure speculation. Because, everything over here is just speculation.
It's tough to get inside Putin's head.
Yeah.
So we don't know what he's trying. But we can certainly say that there is something amiss. He dies the 3rd time. He carries out a rebellion, an armed rebellion.
Just a couple of months ago.
Nothing happens at that point of time.
Even though Putin had vowed that those who did this rebellion will be basically killed.
Yeah. So maybe it's that vow that he's fulfilling now, and he's saying, okay, I have. But then say it loud.
Say it, exactly. I mean, if you're doing it, then this helps you look great, right? Because there's also a clip that's gone viral on social media. I don't know if you've seen it on X, formerly Twitter. It's gone viral on X of, I think, 2018 interview with a journalist. I'm guessing it was a journalist who asks him in Russian, but subtitles the wahan pe, ki what's the one thing you can never forgive? And Putin answers betrayal with that look on his face.
By the way, now that you mentioned X, I still
call it Twitter.
Refer to it as Twitter, because I don't know if there is a way of expressing what you write on X. Like you tweeted.
What do you do with,
what do you do with X? That sort of
I think it's now called post, by the way. You post it.
Oh, you post.
Yeah. They've because they had retweet below. Now it's called repost or quote post or something like that. So they're calling it post.
So Elon Musk has posted
Achha.
that I was expecting this a lot earlier or something.
Prigozhin's of course.
So the kind of interest that's there in people like even Elon Musk.
Yeah, of course.
That I was expecting this much earlier or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So I mean that's what I was saying earlier on. The intrigue.
The intrigue. Yeah.
It will intrigue everyone.
Of course.
I think Biden has also
he did.
commented.
He made some comment on the lines of a lot of things happen in Russia, but none of those things happen without Putin's knowledge or backing or something on those lines.
Some kind of
misquote him.
political statement.
He's a US president, so let's not end up misquoting him, but something on those lines. Basically saying कि अगर ये हुआ है तो Russian government is involved.
And there is a lot of excitement, at least last evening and early this morning, on Twitter, on X.
Of course.
Lots of stories, lots of theories, lots of speculation, and there is a lot of interest in what the hell has happened.
The final thought on this topic, and I think this is something we should have discussed before as well. Don't know how to actually frame the question, but I'll just put it out there. The way I see it, things seem to be in a confusing mess in Russia right now, right? What happens if Putin dies? Because he seems to be the only one who might know what's happening. Prigozhin on his own, whose side, which guy is doing what tomorrow. And this actually leads us to a larger question of what happens in such countries where the head of state assumes power or such absolute power that no one knows what's going on except that one person. So my question being very simple, what happened? I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but he's an old man. Sometime it'll happen. There is no, elections are a farce in Russia. It's almost everyone can agree on that. There is no line of succession in his own party. Opposition leaders, like we've discussed, have either been bumped off or are in jail. And if they are there, then they're not a high stature. Within his cabinet, so to speak, we've never come across any reporting of this guy is the second in command. There's a prime minister, but I think it's just a figurehead in Russia. So what happens tomorrow when Putin dies? What happens to Russia, this old superpower who once fought a great war? What happens?
Before the recording, in another context, we were talking about second in command.
Yes. Yeah, we were.
So it was completely...
The importance of grooming them, basically.
Yeah. That term grooming is a very important one in a lot of workspaces these days.
Yes.
So I've heard that a lot. That you must have a line of succession, as you mentioned, grooming. For the job.
What happens if you're not there tomorrow?
Because I have covered the military, I often refer to it as 2IC, the second in command.
Second in command.
See, the difference between a military 2IC and a lot of other 2ICs that you see in several other aspects of life. In the military concept, a 2IC means 2IC, means business. But when the incumbent is not there, I have the command, I have the authority, replacing his command and authority. Or for that matter, in hierarchy, anybody who's in command will take decisions at that point of time, but that doesn't necessarily happen in so many other walks of life. We wait for calls, we wait for emails, slightly more bureaucratic, if you want to call it. The military cannot afford to do that. I'll give you a very small example, but a very apt one. A few days back, I came across a video, and I'm aware it's not something that was not new to me, where in somewhere in Kashmir, a young Major Saab is speaking to some terrorist hold-up, some operation happening.
Acha. Over a megaphone, I'm guessing.
I think it was a normal phone.
Acha, okay. Over a phone call.
Over a phone call. Basically pursuing them to surrender. And going to the extent of saying that I will take care of your security.
Okay.
I've asked my guys, मेरे लड़के पीछे हैं, गोली नहीं चलाएंगे, तुम में से किसी को चोट वोट तो नहीं है, गोली तो नहीं लगी है, showing concern. So now come to think of it, that's the young guy, maybe less than 30, is dealing with taking a decision of a terrorist surrender. Sounds like really heavyweight stuff.
हाँ, माने तो someone's approval चाहिए होगा, बात किया कि नहीं किया, कैसे तुम अपने आप कर लिए.
That is the difference between so many other walks of life. In this, here you are empowered.
Of course. And you have to be. I mean, in that case.
I'm not saying we should all become military in our thinking, but for efficiency,
of course,
we need to empower those who've been put or who have been groomed as well. For the big jobs, unless you empower them.
And the larger team needs to be also told, this guy or this girl, whoever it is the one.
It shouldn't be a figurehead.
Yeah.
In Putin's context, I certainly don't believe that he believes in grooming somebody else.
But that's my question then. I mean, see, he could be if you want to call him selfish, but then because see, when we talk of Putin and we talk of the Ukraine war, we've talked about this person who loves the Soviet Russia and who's seen it fall, the Berlin Wall come down, etc. He was a spy officer in Germany when the wall came down. He's seen the disintegration of the USSR and he wants that thing back. So isn't he doing a disservice to his own country by not grooming somebody?
I think politicians, I don't know if they really groom. I don't think that's something that you'll see in efficient organizations. You might groom somebody in a political party, but a head of state, I doubt. Who has been groomed?
True, but when a state operates the way Russia does...
See, when Prime Minister Modi suddenly was told to the world that Prime Minister, when BJP decided he is our PM candidate, PM face, they believed that they had groomed him. And that belief was sort of thrust upon everybody. It was reinforced that we were actually grooming him. Are we sure that the BJP was grooming him? There were other BJP chief ministers as well who had done well. Sometimes it's a fluke, the grooming story. I don't think any politician would actually want to groom anybody to be in their shoes.
Right, but the thing is, the system in India is not the one like in Russia.
Certainly not.
So that's what I mean. So the way I imagine it, the way sitting from India, seeing world media reports, reading about it, and talking to you, the way I see it is that everything in Russia is controlled by the Kremlin. That is essentially the president's office. The president is no longer there. Then the way I see it is you just have too many chefs, all of them claiming to be the boss.
So when these kind of things happen, today we might actually go off at a huge tangent. Because one thing leads to another. Yeah. When people talk of strong political leadership, I have a problem with that. That's my personal view. What is a strong political personality? First you need to define. What exactly is a strong political personality? And in a efficient, civil, democratic setup, how exactly do you see a strong political personality?
Someone who can get everyone along and make everyone happy with the decision that
they are
taking.
See, you can't make everyone happy for everything.
Okay with it.
But we are okay with it. The first thing should be that you should be seen as somebody who can ensure consensus.
Yes.
For me, that's a strong leader.
Yes.
Unfortunately, sometimes our minds are colored and we say a strong leader is one who can take decisions that have never been taken.
That is,
Well, that's an argument. That's a strong leader. Now, okay, both are strong leaders. Now, if a strong leader takes decisions that have never been taken and has sort of taken a vow to shatter status quo, then it becomes difficult to get everybody along.
True.
To ensure that there's consensus. But if you manage consensus, then you are the leader.
The leader, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're in the game.
That's when you become invincible, So I don't know how Putin sees himself. None of us are an expert at Russian politics. I don't know what will happen in Russia after Putin. And I don't know what he's thinking about it.
Yeah.
But these kind of situations often lead to chaos, lead to chaos.
And none of us can read Putin's mind, like we've said several times on this podcast. And I think that's a good way to end this episode. We went for a tangent to political study for a bit, but I think it's also relevant. It's also relevant to in our defense, because defense ultimately in this world where most countries are democracies is led by political people. Like in this country, we know for a fact, and this is something that Abhishek has said on this on this podcast, that going to war in India is always a political decision, never a military decision. It's always an option for the military, but the decision is always political.
Balakote strikes wasn't an Air Force decision.
Yeah.
It was
Political.
The political leadership wanted to.
Yeah.
Surgical strikes,
calling it that and coming out in public and giving a press conference, that was a political decision.
The thing about surgical strikes, again, this is a good thing that we should probably end with. A few days back, there was another surgical strike.
I heard there was a lot of chatter.
Daily got it wrong.
Chatter on social media. X again, yeah.
They got it wrong and they called it, a newspaper, they called it a surgical strike. Whereas it was just military action to push back infiltration. That's what the army said later.
What I get is कि in that pushback, obviously कुछ हुआ होगा. Maybe perhaps some crossing over. But that was surgical strike per se. No?
So that's why I'm saying that the term surgical strike was a political term.
Yeah, ekdam. It was not a military term.
It was not in military parlance before that.
Yeah.
Similar strikes would have happened before.
Yeah. It's an operation for the military.
It's an operation for the military.
Target है वो target उस तरफ से क्या करें?
कैसे करें? How to do it? But the term surgical strike was, forget about a war. To coin a term such as surgical strike and
have a press
now
conference.
Now it's in mainstream lingo.
Yeah.
Indian surgical strike. It's because of that I think that the newspaper got it wrong.
I'm kind of, that's what it said. I know, when I saw the chatter on X, I thought of pinging you. I was like, but caught up with Chandrayaan landing, so will not do it. But I kind of got it. Mostly क्या हुआ होगा, infiltration हो रहा होगा. So in pushing it back, perhaps they kind of cross over, but that's not a surgical strike, bhai. That's an operation.
Oh, what's a surgical strike then?
I mean, I would argue nothing. Pinpoint strike would be an accurate, but that's an accurate strike.
But that's what you want every time.
Every time, exactly.
You don't want inaccurate strikes.
Yeah.
You want all your strikes to be surgical.
Yeah, so by that logic, military should be surgical in everything. Yeah. Even like a march past should be surgical then.
Should be perfect.
Salute should be surgical.
It should be perfect. Yeah. That's what, and it is.
It is.
That's what part of the training is.
Yeah, it's all about. Right. Fun note to end this episode on. So that's thanks a lot, Abhishek. Great talk, a great chat, very intriguing subject. And third time, like you said, this guy has died in a plane crash. Almost reminds me of I forgot, I think he was the Islamic State chief, al-Baghdadi, who had died several times before finally killed by the US forces. So that's it. Thanks a lot, Abhishek. And thanks a lot to our viewers, our listeners, and as always, our producer, Anna Priyadarshini. And, by the way, someone left us a comment saying that this is a great podcast for all defense aspirants. So, that was one of the...
for defense aspirants?
Aspirants, yeah.
We're schooling people.
Could be. आज तो हमने political ज्ञान दे दिया कि how to be a strong leader. The one who shall take everyone along is the strong leader, is the leader, you said. So.
But I don't think that's the right way of putting it for a defense aspirant.
For a defense aspirant, yeah. Military में तो भाई everyone along नहीं होता, order होता है, right? So that's it. Thanks a lot, Abhishek. Thanks a lot to our viewers and listeners. Do leave us a comment on whatever platform you listen to us on. YouTube pe ho to you can just leave a comment below. If you want to send a text to us, you can WhatsApp us at 8588 966 996 or an email at pods@indiatoday.com. That's pods@indiatoday.com. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries with our passport. Bye-bye.